All right, so here we have a tribe of people basically in a different culture who are crafting and gathering and making different things. And so essentially what this time and this culture required of these people is to be able to put themselves in positions to do their work, to do things like crafting and to make food. So as you can see with the guy that's kind of dead center here, he's all the way down in what we call an Asian squat where his feet are fully dorsiflex. So he's actually developed a knack for that posture and for that stance. And kind of what that requires of him is lots of isometric strength and just the ability to keep his line of gravity within his base of support in that position. So nowadays, I mean, it's not very common that you see somebody in a squat like that just on a daily basis, just doing whatever they do, at home, like chores or things like that, because we have, a desk or a chair to sit in. So it looks like he's preparing some type of food. Whereas at home nowadays, if you're making dinner, we have the kitchen table, we have the countertop, and then we have a chair to sit in. So we have all these things that support us where we don't actually need to ourselves support ourselves and find a posture that is comfortable and stable for us without the assistance of any other device like a chair or a table. But to compare a culture like this to ours nowadays, you could say in more functional activities, things like working out or specifically performing like a squat with resistance training, it is important to be able to maintain a certain posture during an exercise like squat, which kind of correlates to what he's doing here. Yes, he's not performing resistance training, but he is in a deep squat and it requires a certain amount of posture to maintain that squat.
All right, so this is another example of evidence that we think culture influences posture. You can clearly see that this is a little bit more modern and wealthy area where he has a chair and table to use on a daily basis versus what we saw earlier. They don't, and they do a lot of their work on the ground. And so they use like a deep squat to do their handiwork or different things like that. So they have a little bit better positional stability in the previously mentioned culture versus this is a little bit different. He doesn't have to rely on himself to hold that static posture for a while. He's relying a little bit more on the chair. And perhaps we could maybe assume or hypothesize that he doesn't have as good of positional stability as the man in the other exhibit there, just because.
Okay, so here we have an Eskimo, and basically what we're going to talk about is their environment. Obviously their environment and kind of where they live is a lot different than where we live, even though we do have pretty bad winters sometimes. This is kind of like the extreme of the extremes. So we're just going to talk about how their environment influences their movement and their gait specifically. So with what we have here, we have an Eskimo who's seal hunting, and so as you can see, he's on the ice above a big body of water. So not only is he on ice, so it's probably slippery, but he's also on ice that's above water, and he's probably being a little bit more tentative with his gait and not taking big steps because he doesn't want to break the ice, on the off chance that there is a really thin part somewhere and then he goes through and causes a lot more trouble for himself. So his gait probably looks a little bit different in the fact that his loading response is probably a lot more emphasized and slower because he's not putting all of his weight down kind of in a short period of time. He's probably taking his time to put his weight down. And then when it comes to his swing phase as a whole, he's probably not taking really big steps either, because then his foot could slip out from underneath him, or if the ice does break in front of him, that could cause greater problems. He doesn't have as great of control of his loading phase. If he splits his legs really long or has a really long step length.
So we can compare when we have our winters and it might be slippery out if we have some ice around, that we notice we are taking a lot smaller steps to decrease our chance of slipping. So we're reducing the amount of friction force. It helps us stay stable, which is likely what they do in a similar situation versus dry ground where we might take longer strides, things like that. And to contrast a little bit, if we are like I am now, just in shorts and a t-shirt, I may likely move differently versus in the little diagram here, where he's wearing thick wool clothes or any type of fur that is. It may influence his movement a little bit. So in conclusion, both environment and culture do influence gait, movement in general, and posture. And we think this is really important to consider as future physical therapists, because each of our patients are going to be different, come from different backgrounds, live in different environments, and that will influence our treatment for them.
Yeah, and building off of that as well, as physical therapists in the future, it's important to see those differences in patients and not necessarily see them as abnormal, because to us they may be abnormal, but to them it may be normal. So not to have a broad standard for all your patients, but know that each person is different, and have a more personalized approach to all your patients will help you be more successful and will help those people get better in whatever way they need to. I'm on top of the world, I'm on top of the world, waiting on this for a while now.